I'm Ann Charles.
I'm Linda Quinlan.
I'm Keith Ghostland. Today is Tuesday, December 4th. Happy Hanukkah. And now we've got titillating headlines for you.
Well, let's start with some international news, shall
Any
we?
penguins?
No.
I'm leaving.
We have bad news from Taiwan, better news from Bermuda. An MP reveals he's HIV positive in a move to tackle the stigma. He made this announcement in Parliament. His name is MP Lloyd Russell Moyle, and I'd like to show his picture now. The first driver's license is given to a trans woman in Islamabad. Her name is Layla Ali. This is in Pakistan. She went to the DMV to complain, or to the police to complain about their treatment of trans people. They started talking about driver's licenses. She applied, and she has been granted one. The president of Chile signs a transgender identity law. In Delhi, it's the first queer pride march after the landmark ruling, and the focus has shifted to marriage and adoption. I have a picture now before you of marchers sporting rainbow paint on their faces. A teenager comes out as gay in a Sydney Catholic school assembly, a wonderful story. And I'd like to show you that young person's picture. Auckland Pride on the edge of collapsing, according to the founder, because of the police being able to march in uniform. An Australian wedding magazine refused to feature gay couples. Now it's out of business. A married gay man sues the Hong Kong government over a rejected public housing application. So I'm not going to get to all these stories, but those are the headlines.
Very good. There's no penguins, but we can live with that.
Yeah, I guess we have to.
Oh, I'm going to spend a little bit of time, not much, to George W. Bush, followed up by Pope Francis. Another
deplorable.
You're just pushing it tonight.
She said it. And something people might be interested in is the Advocate has an ongoing series called Can't Be Converted, and it's collected testimonies of those who have endured conversion therapy in states where they allow it. I found it the write-ups pretty compelling. If you're interested in any of that, you can go and check out their online newspaper. Athlete Emily Sheck, she rises above her family's rejection when they find out she's gay. And LGBTQ TV viewers are now counted. Nielsen is going to count LGBTQ people when they do their television viewing habits. So we're going to be included, so that's kind of good.
We've always been included. They're just going to ask us to identify who we are
Yes,
now.
indeed. That's true. And then a 12-year-old girl's effort to bring LGBTQ pride parade to Buffalo Grove, Illinois. A black trans woman was shot and killed in Baltimore. University of Texas student says her private dorm banned guests because she's gay. Men's rights activist says lesbians are ugly women who can't find a man. Trump wants a fast track to the Supreme Court to ban transgender military. Lambda Legal sues Social Security on behalf of a gay widower. Jackie Chan, estranged lesbian daughter, recently married her girlfriend. She's Charlie Chan's daughter. And she married Edna Ning, 19, and she married Andy Autumn, 31-year-old Canadian social media person. A lesbian student was left with broken ribs after being attacked at school. No school or town was mentioned in this particular article. And a grandmother is desperate to find her transgender granddaughter who vanished after leaving Virginia in 2012. Sage Smith, 19, was last seen on November 20th, 2012. in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Grindr president slammed for saying marriage is between a man and a woman. So
You had a whole bucket of, I don't know what, yeah. So, this week's trivia question. December issue of Out in the Mountains. Lead story. This was the takeaway quote for a meeting with a queer community organization in southern Vermont. Most important issue of this campaign is that the American people are giving up on the political process. Who said it, and more importantly, what year? So there are some events coming up. Thursday, December 13th, health insurance coverage. Pride Center is having someone come in from Vermont Legal Aid to talk about these are the barriers that the LGBTQ people usually encounter when trying to get insurance. December 15th is when open enrollment closes. Obamacare has not gone away. Please be mindful of the date. Tuesday, December 18th, 6:30, again at the Pride Center, Vermont Diversity Health Project. Open forum, connecting to healthcare providers. This is going to be a conversation about how you can find people who really know how to provide us with care. For a future show, because it's going to take too much time to talk about it on this episode, what's going on with the Vermont National Guard? The Old Boys Network, incredible allegations that are coming out in an ongoing series in 7 days.
I didn't know anything about it.
I do.
Every year, by the work of Representative Gino Sullivan of Burlington, the National Guard is required to give a presentation at the beginning of each legislative session about how they're dealing with issues of sexual harassment and homophobia within the ranks. That's when I'll be talking about it. December 1st was World AIDS Day, and that's what I'm going to talk about later.
Okay. Ann.
Let's go to Taiwan, where we have some mixed, well, I would say even bad news. You may recall that in May of 2017, Taiwan's top court ruled that restricting marriage to a man and a woman was unconstitutional, and that marriage equality must be legalized within 2 years, either through changing the civil code or the implementation of a separate law. Then, so this was hailed as a breakthrough. Taiwan was, again, hailed as the beacon of LGBT rights in Asia. So what happened was nobody did anything to implement this. If nothing had happened, people would have been able to just start, same-sex people would have been able to start registering to get married, but this gave the right wing time to mobilize and initiate these referenda about same-sex marriage, about LGBT.
You mean to be on the ballot now, even after it was?
It was on the ballot, right.
Uh-huh.
And with the help of some deplorables from the United
They just
States,
travel everywhere, those
including
people.
Brian
Yeah,
Brown,
but they keep coming back.
the referenda were defeated. What happened was it became clear that the Democratic Progressive Party wasn't going to take the initiative. Taiwan conservative groups began to disseminate misinformation on social media and launch these referenda. The vote was really staggering against, in favor of keeping keeping marriage between a man and a woman. And so it can be enacted, but through a separate law. And so LGBT strategists now think they're going to have to propose a separate law to legalize gay marriage, but separate but unequal is what some of the activists are suggesting. The impact of these referenda, has been unfortunate, to say the least. According to the Marriage Equality Coalition, 3 gay people committed suicide after the referendum result, while more than a dozen have attempted suicide or self-harm. Calls to the LGBT hotline jumped 40% after the failed same-sex marriage vote. Phone calls from LGBT plus people and parents who have LGBTQ students have both increased. 4 calls out of 10 are about the referendum topics. Advocates are concerned about the impact on the mental health of LGBT people. The LGBT hotline, the head of the hotline says, in Hotline's opinion, the main purpose of anti-LGBT campaigners to hold the referenda was to destroy LGBT and LGBT education, but the whole campaign turns out to be the biggest education about LGBT people for the Taiwan society instead. She said, so they didn't win. People talked about LGBT concerns a lot, and many people came out to their friends and families as a result. We might lose the referendum, but it's also the first time we have the opportunity to have a conversation with so many people. So it's the referenda were defeated. It's a blow, but the hotline, Mi Ying, the hotline supervisor, says maybe it's.
Will it come up again, do you think?
Well, they're going to have a separate law now.
Right.
That's, and,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
there's a lot of frustration about that.
Yeah.
But the right wing didn't lose any time, and
No.
they prevailed in this instance.
They must have their own, like, private jets they fly all over the world
Mm.
to try to. Anyway, George Bush died, I think, on World AIDS
Day, yes.
So I just want to talk very briefly about him. Barney Frank, who spent 32 years in Congress, told the Washington Blade that the former president was bad for LGBTQ issues and wouldn't do anything to advance them. Barney asked him to rescind Eisenhower's rule that said gay people couldn't get security clearances. He refused. He also refused to roll back a military ban on gay service members. Bush was, as we all know, vice president to Reagan, who was horrible about AIDS. And he basically agreed with the evangelical supporters on social issues. Bush promised a kinder, gentler presidency. He gave a speech on AIDS epidemic in 1990, but no strategy or commitment to funding was made. In the end, Bush caved to the same Reagan extremists when it came to AIDS and LGBTQ rights.
I mean, his emphasis was on abstinence when he could have mobilized so many resources.
Yeah, I know, and he did not.
He's got
He
blood
did
on his
nothing.
hands like his predecessor.
Yep. Anybody else have anything to say before I move on? Okay.
I'm holding my comments for the end.
Okay. And a black transgender woman was shot and killed in Baltimore. Police found Tidy unconscious on the side of the street. The police were called when neighbors heard shooting outside. On November 8th, a gay man was also murdered in Baltimore. Both cases are unsolved at this time. And a Norfolk, Virginia firefighter says the city forced him out of a job after learning he was gay. Philip Gardner is suing the city and accuses the city of creating a hostile environment for him. The suit also charges the city with discrimination against him due to his gender. University of Texas student says her private dorm has been banned for guests, and she said it's because they're gay. She's gay. 300 women live in this. The dorm is called Scottish Wright dorm, a private all-female residence near the University of Austin campus. Kay Baker says that she is the only woman in the dorm who is not allowed to have any visitors. Baker also said that some women from her residence complained when her girlfriend used the bathroom.
Oh, here we go again with the bathrooms.
I know. And Trump asked the Supreme Court to fast track and uphold his transgender military ban, especially since he now has his guy Kavanaugh in the court. In 2017, he tweeted that he would block trans people from serving in the military, and he overturned Obama's era decision that allowed individuals to serve. Trump wants to skip all the lower courts because he's afraid that, as has been going on, that they will deny what he wants. So he just wants to fast track it to the Supreme Court, since he has Kavanaugh, and he'll be able to, hopefully, he thinks, ban transgender people from being in the military. So, anyway.
Despite all the studies and surveys that says for the military this is not an issue.
No, no.
Mm-hmm.
This is his personal vendetta, I believe. So anyway, what's going on locally?
We're going to talk about HIV and AIDS. The epidemic is far from over. There's close to 37 million people infected internationally, and close to 2 million of those are under the age of 15. In the United States, there's an estimate of over 1 million people who are infected, and probably 1 in 7 people don't realize that they're HIV positive. And the reason I'm saying this is on World AIDS Day, Pence, again, did not mention or include the LGBT community in any of his comments.
That's right.
He said how we were going to continue to support and move forward on HIV and AIDS initiatives. But in their 2019 budget, they have asked for a $1 billion cut in HIV and AIDS funding. And most of this is the money that goes to PEPFAR, which is the President's Emergency Relief for those nations that really cannot afford to provide treatment and intervention.
Yep.
There's an estimate that they may have already saved 60 million lives through this funding. They want to cut $1 billion, but Pence has also made a commitment of over $100 million to faith-based organizations and communities. Remember that abstinence-only message that you were hearing about? Vermont, we are not immune. There is a growing rate of infection here. Of the people who have most recently been diagnosed, 2/3 of them were Vermont residents at the time of their diagnosis, which means it is here. It has always been here. It continues to be here. One of the issues that we are confronted with at this point in time is that PrEP, which can provide prophylactic treatment, does not provide prophylactic treatment to sexually transmitted infections. So we may be experiencing a rise in syphilis and chlamydia in the men who have sex with men community. There is so much more work we need to do. The conversation should not have ended, but when was the last time you talked about this?
Well, let's go to Bermuda, where there's more back and forth, but in this case, it's been a good outcome. A ruling by the Court of Appeal to allow same-sex marriage in Bermuda could have international implications, and it has occurred. The timeline was, there was a lot of back and forth beginning in June 1913. I've reported on some of it. On May 8, 2018, the Chief Justice ruled that the Domestic Partnership Act, which was the substitute for marriage, that was ruled in May to be against the Constitution, but it stays the effect of the decision to allow the Attorney General a chance to appeal. In any event, in November, the Court of Appeal dismisses the Attorney General's appeal, refuses a stay, allowing same-sex marriages to proceed. I have a picture before you of two lesbians united in marriage.
In Bermuda?
In Bermuda, well, yes. Here's Bermudan Faith Bridges. She's
So
on
they're
the
back
right.
on the cruise?
Well, actually, they didn't get married in Bermuda, but they were on hand for these proceedings.
Uh-huh.
Bermudan Faith Bridges Wright and her wife, Carolyn Altman, are holding hands in the picture. They were applauding the fact that same-sex marriage finally became legal after a landmark ruling. Bermudan Faith Bridges said she hoped that the decision meant an end to the long-running legal battle. She said, "We were nervous, we didn't know what the answer was going to be, or that they would come to the right conclusion. Either way, those who want to get married will be it here or somewhere else. We were married away, but we hope that this will mean that people want to get married in our country and that they are able to." Mrs. Altman added, "It's a validation. It's good to be recognized here without any doubts. Now, the government can apply for the matter to be heard by London's Privy Council within the next 21 days. If the Privy Council agreed to hear the case, it could stay the effect of this good judgment." But people think if it goes to the Privy Council,
It'll pass.
It'll pass.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It'll be
So if I'm
upheld.
taking the cruise, I should only put one foot on the pier just to be
Exactly.
safe.
Exactly. 21 days from now, we'll talk again.
Okay.
Again, I mentioned in the headlines, Lloyd Russell Moyle gave a speech before the House of Commons in which he talked about his 10-year anniversary of being HIV. No one should feel less able to thrive because of HIV status, he said before the Parliament. He was applauded. The former Labour Minister, Chris Smith, was the UK's first openly gay MP. When he entered the House of Commons in 1983, he announced that he was HIV positive a few months before leaving Parliament in 2005. Speaking in an adjournment debate to discuss the upcoming 30th World AIDS Day, Russell Moyle, the person whose picture I've shown, he said, "The anniversary gives us cause and pause to reflect on how far we've come and to remember those we've lost." One more point I would like to make. I showed you the picture of the young man who came out in the Sydney Catholic High School before 1,500 of his peers. His name is Finn Stannard, and he got a standing ovation, and he's had a lot of affirmation since he came out. In Australia, there was a plebiscite last year that approved gay marriage, and Finn Stannard said he was heartened by that, and it gave him courage to come out to all of his classmates.
Are you showing this clip now?
No, the clip,
It
we
wouldn't
couldn't
load?
show the
Oh,
clip.
that's
It's on SBS
right.
News if you
Oh.
want to
I
investigate
think
it.
it was the Pope.
It was the Pope.
He may have intervened.
There you are.
You never know.
I know, and we heard that, was it the principal of the school? The
Every-
Catholic school was for it?
Everyone
Yeah.
applauded him.
That was great.
The staff, the school, and Tony Abbott is an alum of this particular St. Ignatius High School, and he opposed same-sex marriage. But times are changing, at least
In London. Or
in Sydney. But when he made the speech in June, there was a lot of controversy swirling in Australia about whether same-sex high schools should get any funding, if they,
Yeah.
if they discriminated about same-sex marriage. And in this instance, this fellow, I mean, I just want to dedicate this story to all the people who grew up and who went to high school in same-sex Catholic high schools, like yours truly. In my case, it was a hotbed of homophobia. But things
Yes.
have changed. Or things are changing.
And now it's only half.
Now
'Cause
my
we have
school
that
has,
story about Canisius.
well, my school has closed.
Ah,
I
okay.
doubt if that's the reason, but go ahead.
Men's rights activist says lesbians are ugly women and they can't land a man.
That's nice.
Coach Dave Dubenmeyer made his conclusion. I love this. After going to Walmart.
What?
Is that where you've been hiding?
Honestly. And he said because of the women he saw there were so ugly, he could see why some of them might become lesbians.
Are you serious?
Yeah. The ACLU filed a suit against him in 1999 when he refused to stop leading prayers in the locker room of the high school he worked for as a coach. That's why he's called Coach Dave.
I see.
And he also stated that he thought kids were being pussified by anti-bullying laws.
I'm not going there. I'm just not going there.
All right, well, you know.
Colorful character.
Colorful character, yes. And Lambda Liga is suing Social Security on behalf of a gay widower seeking spousal benefits. Michael Eli is 65. He had a 43-year relationship with his husband and was married as soon as it was legal in Arizona. However, according to Social Security law, you have to be married at least 9 months to collect survivor benefits, and he was only married to his partner for 6 months.
Because gay marriage
Yeah.
was legalized.
That's right, and he got married 2 weeks after the law became that that they could get married. So Lambda is fighting because, you know, he did have a 43-year relationship. He got us married as quickly as he could, and he's still being denied benefits. So, and speaking of, is it Canisius? You know,
Canisius.
Canisius.
Back to Buffalo.
Yes, back to Buffalo and the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
A different outcome than, well, anyway. Athlete Emily Schecht rises above her family's rejection for being a lesbian. She is a cross-country runner for Canisius College in Buffalo, New York. So what happened to her was she came out to her parents, and they said, you have two choices. You can either go to conversion therapy, or you can be excommunicated from your family. So she decided to
Pack an overnight bag?
stay a lesbian. So her parents left her with the credit card, took away her license plates off her car.
They took her credit card?
No, they left her with the bill. They never paid it, you know, as
Oh, I
students
see.
often do. They took the license plate off her car. They stopped paying for her car insurance, and they filled the car with stuff that she had left behind when she'd gone to college that were hers in the house, and she was not allowed to ever speak to her siblings again. So her roommate at college started a GoFundMe, and they've gotten $25,000. So she's continuing on at the school, and seems like she's going along. So good luck to you.
Absolutely.
I have a clip here, which I just love. Ann and I were in New York, and we saw The Prom, which is a play on Broadway. Anyway, there's a lesbian kiss, which 23 million people watched on the Macy's Day Parade. And The Prom made history when they ended the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade performance with the Broadway play, The Prom, directed by Casey Nicholson. And so it's a lesbian in a small town in Indiana who wants to take her partner,
Her girlfriend.
her girlfriend, to the prom. And there's been a little bit of backlash on social media about this, but basically, mostly, it's been pretty positive. So here is a clip from the play, The
It-
Prom.
As performed at the Macy's parade.
Correct. Okay,
Boy, was that fun.
wasn't it?
And in the
We
play,
love the play.
in the play, the kiss is longer.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And when you go back to New York, you can see Torch Song,
Yeah.
a revival of Harvey Firestein.
Yes, we could.
So I'm going in a different direction. 35 years ago, HIV and AIDS came crashing into my life. And it was the face of someone who I loved and lost too quickly. This year, on World AIDS Day, I was struck more with who's not here, who got left behind. And this song came to mind. It was written by John Calvi, who is from Putney, Vermont, and it was originally performed by Meg Christian. The ones who aren't here. I'm thinking about the ones who aren't here and won't be coming in late, home all alone in the family and won't be coming out tonight. Wish I could know all the lovers and friends kept from gathering. I think of you now, the ways you can go. We're all of us refugees. So let's pass a kiss and a happy, sad tear and a hug the whole circle round for the ones who aren't here, for the hate and the fear, for laughter, for struggle, for life. Let's have a song here for you and for me and the love that we cannot hide. And let's have a song for the ones who aren't here and won't be coming out tonight. And we're going to follow this up with Anne's interview, and then we'll be back.
Hi, I'm here with Donna Gottschalk, who is a photographer, a lesbian photographer who has a show at the Leslie Lohman Museum of Gay and Lesbian Art in New York. The show is called Brave, Beautiful Outlaws, the photographs of Donna Gottschalk. So I'm pleased to be here with her today with you.
Hello.
I'd like to start by looking at a couple of shots, if I could. The first is the installation of Brave, Beautiful Outlaws. It should give you a sense of what it's like in the museum. There's a picture of Donna standing in front as you enter. The next picture is a close-up of Donna at the Christopher Street Rally in 1970. You see the inscription, "I'm your worst fear, I'm your best fantasy," a fabulous line that's gone down through the ages as a out there statement of lesbian feminism. The photo was taken by Diana Davies, and you are the composer.
No, I'm not the composer. The composer of that placard was Michaela Griffo.
Oh, good.
And Michaela was scribbling away, and then she was passing them out, and I got that one.
Oh, that's great. It's
Yeah.
I thought
Oh,
you
yeah.
wrote it. Well, that's great. I'm
I
glad
know.
to give her credit.
Oh,
So
God's sakes,
this
yeah.
means that you were in the first Christopher Street Pride Parade, as it was called then, the year after Stonewall.
Yeah,
And you were an activist in New York, member of the Gay Liberation Front.
sure, I
cetera.
remember.
What was that like?
It was great. It was great. Up till then, I'd only gone to bars,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really pretty young. But I had funny idea I would get into bars, and you know, I saw an ad for Gay Liberation Front, and I went. And my other roommates at the time, I had gotten all of them from the bars, and they really didn't.
Were you living on East 9th Street?
East 9th Street, yeah.
Mhm.
But I grew up in that neighborhood, so that's where I went looking for an apartment, and I was getting ready to go to Cooper Union, which is
Mhm.
also in the neighborhood, so you know that was going to work out real good. you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I went to the Gay Liberation Front, and that was just like this great, big, wonderful bunch of beautiful women.
Uh-huh.
and they were talking about. I mean, they just was. It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful. Even when they fought, and they all fought all the time. The men and the women, and everybody was always arguing, but it was great.
A passionate, heady time.
Yeah, I met Carla J there.
Mm-hmm.
Arlene Kistner became my lover. Lois Hart,
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne de Biavier. I mean, everybody Martha Shelley.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these brilliant, brilliant women, and they were a little bit older than me, just old enough. I didn't understand much, but I knew this was a good thing.
Mm-hmm. It was instinct, huh?
Yeah.
Good
yeah.
instinct. Can we turn for a second to some photos from the exhibit? First, I'd like to show Marlene, who was an early friend. Next, I'd like to show Cats in the Big Chair. This is San Francisco, 1972. Helene on her girlfriend's lap, Provincetown, 1974. Self-portrait in Maine in 1976. And finally, a photo of your transgender sibling, Mila. That's a color photograph. What do you want to say about any of these or all of them?
Wow. Well, where do you want me to start? You want me to start with
Wherever you'd like.
Mila, with Marlene?
As you wish. I like this photo of Marlene because she's so out there and bare-breasted, lesbian energy.
Yeah. And she had come from California. She had just hitchhiked across country.
Uh-huh.
And two friends of mine from New York had gone out to California, met her, and Marlene said, I think I want to see the Atlantic Ocean, you know, and she just was this free spirit kind of person, and she hitchhiked across country without much covering her, and came knocking on my door, and I let her in.
Mm-hmm.
I just said that she was incredible. She just was so, I don't know, you know, Marlene really had something special.
So you moved from New York to a separatist commune in California?
Who did?
I've read a lot of articles. You've been covered in the New York Times and elsewhere, and that was my impression, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, not intentionally, you know,
I
it's
see.
just that sort of like when, listen, once you got into GLF, there was no need to know any straight people. I mean, my whole life became either GLF and making a living, you know, and going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And so slowly, you know, I really didn't have that many friends
Mm-hmm.
before that. I was very, very weird and very, very isolated.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, isolated at Cooper Union, isolated at the High School of Art and Design. There was a little clutch of gay kids, and you know, I got drawn into that towards the end of the senior year. But I really, aside from the bars and then GLF, I didn't have much. I had my family, and my family was really very, very, very good. My mother especially was a very good to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
She did not. She wasn't judgmental.
You grew up on the Lower East Side.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you left Cooper Union and moved to the West Coast, or
No,
do I have that wrong?
I left Cooper. When I left, I was lovers with Marlene Kistner, and then all these women I cheated,
the old days.
Yeah, and then I met Joan Byron, and Joan and I fell in love, and I left Cooper Union to go with Joan down to Washington, D.C.
I see.
And I lived there for a while till we broke up. And so and I went to the West Coast.
Uh-huh. So this is Cats in the Big Chair, San Francisco. There's several San Francisco pictures from
Yeah,
that time.
well, Cats had come from Boston.
And Beck is there now, right?
Yeah, she's living in that area now. And she, all I knew was she was a firebrand, and she used to write a lot of things, you know, and that's all I knew. I didn't even read it. I wasn't impressed by any of that. I had sent for my younger siblings, and I was more or less had them in my apartment in San Francisco, and I was trying to raise my younger brother, and I worked, but Katz was great. You know, she was really great. She just cut through the S-I-H-H.
That's okay, we can swear.
She just, what was remarkable about, for all the firebrand stuff, she was this tiny, tiny little person.
Well, you could see on the photo.
Well, the chair wasn't terribly big, but Katz was this tiny, tiny little person, and it was just such a, you could see, and she was talking, and she never stopped talking. So
And you could see in the photo, she's looking right at the camera with a sort of a no-nonsense posture. It's great.
Yeah.
So then you moved back from San Francisco after a while? Back to the East Coast?
I guess I stayed in Frisco about 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. I don't know, you lose track of time. And I came back and continued to take pictures, but it was very different. I really was trying to stay out of political. I just was trying to figure out how to live, how to survive. At that point, I didn't have a degree. I wasn't in college anymore. I wasn't a kid. You know, I got a job and I couldn't make a living doing anything. You know, I got a job in a topless bar so I could make more money, which put me. At least I could walk into a bar and talk somebody up and buy her a drink, and which I could never do before. And then I would take pictures of those people.
So you were taking pictures your whole, most of
I
your
just
life, really?
Well, no, not until college.
Not until college, Cooper Union.
Before that, I was in art school, and I used to draw, and that was I really, it was like almost a drug. That's when I felt comfortable, and I also got strokes for it because I was good at it. So, but I knew that I never drew a landscape. I was only interested in people. And so once at Cooper Union, you're required to take a photography course. Someone gave me a camera, an old camera that he had, and the minute I saw what I could uncover, you know, because, you know, you get a contact sheet and there's a million pictures, you know, click, 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 and then, you know, that's the one that says what I feel about that person or what I see in that person. And I was a terrible photographer. I mean, technically, I was a mess. The people who printed the whole show, you know, Deborah Bright was the curator and Raya Lerner, they printed it at the Pioneer Works over in Brooklyn. And I said, you're going to have such a terrible time. You really are. My negatives are so, you know, I never used a flash because it was too intrusive, you know. It gave them too much time to pull themselves together. I didn't want that. I wanted to be really who they were, as much as I could. You know.
Well, I see this self-portrait in Maine in 1976 of you. One of the reviewers said that it shows the personal and the political, that you brought art to the kitchen and the bedroom and so forth. Do you agree with that, or?
I didn't read that one, but yeah, I guess. You know, political, and the thing is that most of the people that I took photographs of, you know, at least half of them are dead, very young. And I mean, I took pictures of people who were transitioning in 1973, and people who died of AIDS, and so that didn't have a safety net of any kind. And so that nobody took pictures of. That's it, I guess. It seemed like nobody was interested in taking pictures of them, and people would look at my pictures and say, "Who's that?" You know, I mean that. And I didn't care if they said that, because they were mine to, you know, I actually kind of thought that it would be my way of keeping my sanity when I was old, when I started to forget.
Believe it or not, we're getting short of time. Are there any, you know, things you'd like to leave the audience with, or is there anything in particular that you'd like to share with us?
I don't know. You know, I think that it's really important that art is really a very important thing, especially for the young. I mean, my father once said to me, he said, "Thank God you've got that, because otherwise you'd be like me. You'd be a drunken horse player." You need to get, you know, you need to express yourself. And so many kids now, with all the cutbacks and everything that's happening, you know, if their family does not have the money to pay for all the extras. I mean, even sports nowadays, they have to pay hundreds of dollars just to play a sport. You know, how are they going to express themselves? They're going to. It's just not going to come out right. It's going to be a very, very, very violent future without a way of. That's.
Well, you're an inspiration, Donna. Thank you for sharing your work with us and your being a guest on the show.
Welcome.
And we'll hope to have you back sometime.
Okay. Okay.
Good interview, Ann.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
And I'm still waiting for the Vermont exhibit.
Yes, that's right.
Because we got to see some additional work that was after the exhibit that you had seen.
And it was wonderful.
Yes.
Great, yeah.
So the trivia question. Most important issue of this campaign is that the American people are giving up on the political process.
I know the answer now.
Yeah.
I know the answer too.
It was said in 1993 at a gathering of SAM, which was Social Alternative for Men, and it was by a new congressman by the name of Bernie Sanders. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. And as Linda says,
Resist.
Resist.